It's hard to beat the sheer enjoyment that comes from playing the 1984 edition of Lode Runner, but I think we can up our game a bit. Well, what do you think, folks? Is this upping our game? I mean, I personally think it is because it's in color. Now, I will agree the background image on this particular colorized version is a bit too busy and distracting. And of course, you know, everyone has love for the black and white version, but color really does add something. If it didn't, well, why aren't we using black and white monitors today, for goodness sake? It does add a lot to the game, and I think it makes it special. The black and white version and this version are special in their own right. Anyway, the source of all this goodness comes from the Dell E1715Sc, which I paid about $55 US for. It's refurbished on Amazon Japan. Couldn't find one on Amazon USA though for some reason, but this is in really good condition. I didn't see too many scratches on it, and so they advertise it's almost like new, and that really confirms what I found out to be true. So this monitor really does display color quite nicely, at least in the way that I expected it to. So let's quit out of here and try something a little bit more demanding. Yes, my friends, Wolfenstein 3D. I mean, who among you haven't played this game before? This game, well, first, before I do my commentary on it, we'll just do some resolution switching. Setting the screen size is important to get the best playback. Now this, of course, will give you the best playback, the smoothest operation, no dropped frames. But as you can see, it's really wasting a lot of the monitor space to display such a small image of the game and lowering the resolution this much. So really what we'd want to do is play it at 640 by 480, but due to the CPU in this computer being an 030, you can see how choppy it is. I mean, it looks beautiful. I'd love to play it. And it's not totally unplayable at this resolution, but it's just not fun playable. So we'll go with 512 by 384 to kind of get a happy medium. It'll be a little bit choppy, but it will be more fun to play. And I think this is acceptable. Now, not everyone likes these 3D shoot 'em up gore games, but for me it holds a lot of nostalgia. Boom. I mean, you know, this is not something you go around doing in everyday life, right? But still. Boom. You're playing a game, but you're taking out the bad guys, and the bad guys in this game are really bad, so we can justify it by saying that, right? Here's another bad guy. Okay, let's get him. Boom, I missed. Alright, let's get you, guy. Come on. Alright, there you go. Now, there are some bad guys you wouldn't consider to be bad. For you animal lovers out there, I'm very sorry, but yes, they made some of the animals bad. So to spare you all the gore and detail, we'll skim through at high speed all the way to the final gate. And you can see my ultimate score. I played for a total of 4 minutes and 10 seconds, and my score was so-so. Now let's up our game even more, something even more challenging for the CPU, Doom 2. Yeah, this one is, well, we thought the Wolfenstein 3D frames were dropping a lot at 640 by 480, but this one is really quite choppy, even at lower resolutions. But I mean, it's Doom, right? So if we can play it, let's try it. So if we go up here and swap the graphics detail, what this is doing is actually boosting the resolution even more, which means it's dropping even more frames, which makes it even less playable. So we don't want to do that. We'll drop it back down a little bit. And it's really made for an 040 processor. I've got an accelerator in here that boosts it, but still, as you can see, it's not boosting it quite enough. Even in small graphics, it's just not that enjoyable of an experience, but I just wanted to show you what's possible when we have a color display, because this type of game is not going to be playable when you have your basic SE30 with black and white internal CRT. So let's get out of here, and we will now do something a little bit more family friendly.
The United States in the mid-1800s. Ours is a large nation, a young nation full of restless, forward-looking people. As the population grows and our borders expand, thousands are looking west to build better lives.
Now, I know some of you played this back in the day at your school. My school actually didn't have this game. I just found it out later. It's quite enjoyable, as is the original. And it works quite well on this monitor. I introduced my daughter to it, and she really took a liking to it quite a lot. It's a fun game to play. I've played it from start to finish. It's really something. If you've not played it before, I recommend it.
Let's quicken the pace. That'll keep us warm, and maybe we can find some shelter further down the road.
And that's exactly what I need to do, quicken my pace and go on to the next thing, which is Photoshop. This is the original version of Photoshop. And we can open the original Mac team. We can see here, if we expand it out, we've got Bill Atkinson there holding the Mac, and then to his left, Burl Smith, and then on to his right in the beard, Jerry Manock, and in the upper left, George Crow. We've got Joanna Hoffman, and of course, who can forget Andy Hertzfeld. Without these people, you would not have a Mac today. I like Photoshop 4 better though. Before we explore Photoshop 4, I should show you why it's going to be a great experience. That's because I can give it 12 megs. In other words, a lot of RAM. And that's because I've got 16 megabyte SIMs filling up all the slots, 1024K times 128, so you've got 131 megs of RAM in there. Makes Photoshop extremely usable. Since I'm located in Japan, I thought I'd show you some Japanese art. This is the original woodcut, and some of you may say, hey, wait a minute, I've seen that somewhere before. And the answer is, yes, you have. This is the original artwork that was the inspiration for, yes, the MacPaint girl, or Oriental girl. This was created by, at least the bitmap version, by Susan Kare. And the original premiere issue of Macworld magazine has a write-up about that. Steve Jobs actually had that picture in a book, and they scanned it. And of course, scanners weren't so great back in the day, so Susan Kare cleaned it up and made the image that we now have today. She's selling that, at least a hand-painted colorized version. The pricing varies by the size that you can choose from her website. So we'll go ahead, since I'm based in Japan, and open up some Japanese art on my hard drive. The monitor, the viewing angles aren't so great. The color accuracy isn't nearly comparable to any Apple monitor, but if you take a look at some of these images that I'm displaying now, they really don't look too bad, right? I mean, you agree, right? They look pretty good. Now, if you'll notice on the left, I can actually use my CRT on the SE30 as a second display. Not that you would really want to, because as you can see as I'm zoomed in here, it's only black and white. Whenever you have an external monitor attached, it's only black and white on the internal, which means pixels are only black or white. No shades of gray when an external monitor is attached, even if you have the top-end PDS video card. So we'll go ahead, and this is my daughter's graduation photo. She's in a kimono because, of course, we're located in Japan. We can do the same thing with her photo too. We can bring it on over to the external, well, my external display is my main display, but now I'm using my CRT as the external display. Honestly, if you're going to use the CRT, it's probably best to go with palettes instead of putting the artwork over there, because as you can see, it's using dithering to kind of simulate grays, and it doesn't do it very effectively. I just want to mention that with the external display connected, the display on the internal CRT is shifted a little bit to the right for some reason that I just cannot understand. And here's the computer with the external display disconnected, and as you can see, it is horizontally centered. So not sure what's going on with that, but that's just something of note. So any of you who own this same video card setup, maybe you can tell me your experience when an external display is connected. Anyway, let's go ahead and do the monitor's control panel so you can see what's going on here. We've got it currently set to 256. We can change that to millions. Switching the colors is on the fly, the color depth switching. And if we want to switch the resolution though, well, that's going to require something a little bit different. We can see here that you can choose from 640 by 480, 800 by 600. 800 by 600 at 60 Hertz really displays quite nicely on this monitor, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. But as you can see, switching the depth is on the fly, but switching the resolution, unlike modern computers, is something that requires a restart. And notice the flicker. It's flickering because I didn't change my camera settings, and it was set to the refresh rate of 640 by 480, so this is a different refresh than that. And it also limits the colors when we boot into 800 by 600, even though this is the top-end video card still. We can go higher resolutions than this, up to 1024 by 768, but for some reason it doesn't look good on this monitor. 832 by 624, that looks pretty good actually, just like 800 by 600, it works quite well. 640 by 480, it has a VGA setting, and I thought that was the one I should use, but actually it comes out terrible, so I end up having to use the regular 640 by 480 setting. The SE30's video card cannot display the native resolution of 1280 by 1024 of this Dell monitor, and as a result, the pixels are not perfectly sharp. So what I'm showing you now is a zoomed in view of 640 by 480 with everything set to black and white. It doesn't look bad from a normal viewing distance, but each pixel isn't perfectly sharp because, again, 640 by 480 is not the native resolution of this screen. So if I change to 4 colors, 16, or not colors, but grays. Okay, and then if I change to colors, you can kind of get an idea of the overall sharpness of everything at the 640 by 480 resolution. And this is 800 by 600 at 60 Hertz. Now, I explored before buying this monitor the purchase of a native 640 by 480 resolution monitor, but most of them were made in Europe and sold over there and just not easily available and really expensive, so that's why I ultimately decided upon this more economically priced Dell monitor instead. And the source of all that color goodness comes from this Apple DB15 connector, which normally connects to an old Apple CRT color display. But I want to connect this to a modern VGA LCD by means of this standard 15-pin VGA connector. However, you can see it is too narrow to directly fit into here. The good news, though, is that you can find very nice little cheap adapters on Amazon like this. I put a link for you in the text description below, which allows very convenient connection of your VGA connector to the adapter, which in turn connects directly to that Apple DB15. By the way, this connector does not have any dip switches, and I do have one that does have dip switches, but I found that they're not really needed for modern LCDs like the Dell LCD that I'm using. Taking a look inside, we see the DB15 connector is connected through these cables to this PDS video card, which is in turn connected to this custom yoke board. We'll come back to this in a minute. And here is the PDS video card. The white connector leads to the back of the CRT to the yoke board. The small black connector leads to the DB15 on the back of the SE30, and this long black connector is the PDS connector, which slots right into the SE30 motherboard. This card is extremely difficult to come by. We can see in the upper left corner This card is made by Micron Technology Incorporated. Yes, my friends, this is the highly coveted and rare Micron Xceed MacroColor 30HR. It has enough video memory to display 24-bit or 16 million colors at its default resolution of 640 by 480, or 8-bit color, 256 colors, at the higher supported resolutions. And if you're wondering why this particular VRAM chip has different markings than the others, that's because in the past, this board had a problem with a vertical line displaying that wouldn't go away. But thanks to Bohl at the 68K MLA, I shipped this board off to him and he found that this particular chip was bad. He swapped it out and now it's working perfectly. Thank you, Bohl. I'm not sure what's going on with all of these green wires on the board, but these were not repair wires. These were actually added by Micron. I guess they found problems with the board at the time of production. And the back of the cord is nothing special. I see two of the jumper wires coming through the hole here and connecting here. I added this electrical tape because there's a metal bracket on the SE30 that presses against it. I remove and insert this card often, so I didn't want the bracket scraping against the circuit board, so I added the tape so that the bracket would scrape against the tape instead. In addition to the MacroColor 30HR, I also was able to acquire the Color 30HR. The physical size for the cards are the same, the connectors here and features are the same except for the amount of video RAM. The regular Color 30 without the macro in the name can support 8-bit, not 24-bit like this one, at the standard 640 by 480 resolution, although this one does support higher resolutions as well. Going back to the CRT yoke board, once you've discharged the CRT, removal is quite easy. Just wiggling and pulling straight back, and then removing the connector on the bottom. And here it is in all of its glory, the highly sought after and rare Micron Xceed Grayscale Adapter, offering 256 grays on the SE30's internal CRT. By the way, I recapped this board, replacing all of the electrolytic capacitors, as you should in cases where they are 20 or 30 years old. And here's the bottom side of the board. I must say, it's pretty shocking the prices that these boards sell at these days, especially because Micron sold them for less than $100. And by the way, the little potentiometer marked RV1 is a brightness adjustment, which you can adjust even when the computer's on using a plastic tool, and taking great care, of course, but it works in conjunction with the brightness on the analog board as well. In the past, I occasionally got some strange artifacts on the screen, so I sprayed some Deoxit D5 into this connector here and on the pins on the yoke, and what do you know, it took care of it. By the way, this wire harness comes with that Grayscale adapter board, and it connects not only to where the stock yoke board connects to the analog board, but it also replaces the main power wire harness, which connects here to the analog board and goes all the way down into the motherboard. Speaking of the motherboard, I should show you that I do have an accelerator on here. This is yet another rare item. It is the socketed Daystar PowerCache 50 MHz 68030 CPU and FPU upgrade, which is very nice because it frees up the PDS card slot for the video card and potentially for a MacCon Ethernet card, so you don't have to put the accelerator also here, which in many cases wouldn't even fit at all. It's also better actually than the 040 accelerators. I have a Turbo 40, but the Turbo 40 will not work with the Micron Xceed video card, and this will. The SE30 will work without this upgrade, but some of the software programs like Castle Wolfenstein, some of the games, really do require an 040 processor, and this is actually fast enough to where it will work fairly well. So the video card enables you to run software you wouldn't otherwise be able to run, and then of course the accelerator adds more compatibility on top of that, just due to its sheer speed. Now here we are booted to the desktop with the Micron Xceed Grayscale yoke board installed, and that will allow us to switch on grays 4, 16, and 256. Now we can also choose colors, but of course we cannot display color. It will just change the Apple logo into different shades of gray, and that's about it. Now this is showing, it's shifted over for some reason here, but it's basically showing internal resolution. We cannot choose any other resolution, of course, because this is dealing only with the internal display. So we'll switch it to grays and 256. Now I showed you before running Wolfenstein 3D on an external display. If I click it here now, it will not run because it requires color. And if we try to trick it and say, okay, let's go up to the monitor's control panel and we'll just pretend we're a color monitor and then try to launch it, it still knows it's not color. So the Grayscale board will not solve that incompatibility. And LoadRunner, the color version, will of course not run either. Darn. SimAnt will take advantage of the 256 grays though, and it looks halfway decent. And unfortunately, even Oregon Trail 2 will not run because it requires 640 by 480. But the good news is that Oregon Trail Run will launch, and it will launch to use the 256 grays as well. And Myst is yet another game that does work and takes advantage of the 256 grays, although it's really made for color, so some of the areas are a little bit dark and splotchy when viewed on 256 grays. I don't want to say it's not usable, but you might need to increase your screen brightness to make it more playable. Interestingly, Doom actually runs. It runs, but as you can see, it's a bit too dark. And of course, it's just as slow as I told you before. There is a gamma adjustment that we can use to make it more playable. But still, the frames per second is pretty slow. But it's pretty neat, the fact that we can play Doom on this computer using the internal CRT. And here is the Xceed Gamma utility. So if some games are too dark, or even paint programs are too dark, you can adjust gamma, brightness, contrast, and all of that from this particular app. And even Mavis Beacon Teaches Typing takes advantage of all 256 grays. Even Norton Utilities will take advantage of it. Now here we are back in Photoshop 4. We can see all the beautiful 256 grays there. We have our lovely girl combing hair. Now you'll notice that the tools over here are cut off at the bottom. We can't access those, and that's another disadvantage. Even though we're able to run Photoshop 4, you're not able to see the tools down there. But if you use a shortcut, the F key will allow you to fill the screen. So what we'll do is hide tools and press F key, and that way we can fill our entire screen with the picture, and we can see it, all the grays there. And here's the one of the Mac team. Now just to show you, if we go into monitors and switch it to black and white, this will show you exactly what a regular SE30 without all of this fancy graphics card stuff will display. Quite a startling difference there. And here's the one of my daughter. Absolutely beautiful in 256 grays. And here is Canvas 3.5, opening the F40 here. One of the greatest draw paint programs were vintage Macs. It's basically Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop in one. Absolutely a wonderful program, up until 3.5.6 anyway. Really stunning. And of course you can run color apps like Color Mech Cheese in 256 grays, of course. And well, maybe it adds a little bit of something. Over black and white, you can see all of the shades of gray over here. So basically the internal grayscale, it adds a little bit of function, but it's mostly fun to play with. And of course the interface, all of your folders and other things, and your actual title bars, your little close boxes, all of those are showing grayscale. Your trash can is grayscale. It's just something that you normally wouldn't be able to do. Something that the Mac wasn't actually designed to do. It was designed to be black and white, but the CRTs can actually display 256 colors. So if you are able to acquire the video card and the yoke adapter board, there really can be a lot of fun with it, even if you don't have an external monitor. But the good news is that these video cards have an external monitor out, so any software that will not run on your computer, you can just connect an external monitor and enjoy that software in a higher resolution. I did a little research on Micron technology. The oldest website I could find on the archive.org was from November 1996. And we can see very early 1990s, mostly text, no graphics here. Crucial, you may know this name from SSDs, the brand. It was a division of Micron even way back then. And this description of Micron technology here talks about DRAMs. I mean, that's how they got their start. Their company was founded in the late 1970s and went public around 1984. But it doesn't make any mention of their video cards here. But because again, this is 1996, and by that time they were pretty much out of the video card business and certainly not selling them for the compact Macs, which were not popular at that particular time. Unfortunately, if I click this Micron Technology Inc. link, it doesn't link back to a 1996 page, so that's not very useful. Keep in mind that Netscape was the very first mainstream browser, not the first browser, but the mainstream one. Even though the internet had existed a few years prior to this, Netscape didn't come out with their browser until late 1994, after which the internet became more mainstream, although the bulk of people were still using services like America Online. But that's another reason we're not going to find information in a website form from Micron. I did some research and found that basically their video card start was around 1989, which corresponded with the release of the SE30, which came out in January of 1989, selling for a whopping $9,120 in today's dollars anyway. So for those of you who are complaining about SE30 eBay prices, well, you're not paying more than the original, even in the original dollars. So just keep that in mind. But looking at the December issue of Macworld magazine, when they came out with what I believe is their first color advertisement in the magazine, they advertised it as color graphics at a down-to-earth price, which of course back in the day I think was very true, but today considering eBay prices, this would be more accurate. The soaring prices of video cards on eBay will drive you absolutely insane. Anyway, we look here at some of the pictures of their cards, and the PDS circuit board format didn't change, but this is one of their earliest boards. And you can see that at the top of the card, the memory there is stacked on its side. So the actual chips that are used on this board are quite a bit different from their later models and different from the model cards that I have. But this is where they got their start. And if we look at the December 1992 issue of Mac User magazine, the Mac Zone, purveyor of software and hardware, online ordering, mail order was popular back in the day. I even purchased from them. They have an advertisement of the Xceed video cards here. One of the cards is for the Mac 2, but for the SE30 is what interests us down here. We can see that they're advertising the Color 30 and MacroColor 30. Now, not the HR models, so this was apparently just prior to the HR models. And we can see basically the price of the Color 30 in the day was $268. And the 24-bit card is $488. So if you think about some of the eBay prices you see these kits selling at today, they're actually selling for more than the original prices were back in the day. And I also found Mac Week magazine. This is from May 1993. I found a Mac Warehouse, also a mail order company, advertisement which shows the Xceed video card here. And as you can see, this is one of the later models, and it says here in the description, for the SE30, we're showing the Color 30HR and the Macro 30HR, and the prices were basically what I just showed you. So $279 for the Color 30HR and $489 for the MacroColor 30HR. And get this, the Grayscale card sold for $89. So today, if you look online, you're going to find you're not going to find even the lower end PDS cards plus the Grayscale kit for less than $1,000. But that's considerably more than it was back in the day. The product shown here is the Color 30HR. And if we look on the archive of Gamba's site, he is talking here. This really needs to be updated because there's a lot of question marks here that could be filled in now. I suppose I should do it. But anyway, the table here is showing us the cards that will fit in the SE30 here. It says that, SE30, the Mac it's compatible with. So this is the very first card they started out with. It was basically a 640 by 480 cards. And we can see the colors and resolutions here. And going all the way up to the MacroColor, right here, MacroColor 30HR for the SE30. The resolutions, you get 16 million colors at its base resolution. And then the colors start to drop off. I believe it drops down to 256 colors once you get to these higher resolutions. And whether or not your modern LCD can display the higher resolutions will really depend on the monitor. By the way, this is the Micron website today. If we zoom in a bit and take a look at the logo, except for that halo, if we go back and compare to the Micron logo here, we can see that the M was retained, and the ICRON, they changed the font a little bit. But basically, folks, this is the same company, and we can see that they are still manufacturing DRAM, but also for SSDs. They're a storage solutions company, and they have, they're a big multinational corporation now. So they've been around for a number of years. Again, started back in the late 1970s. By the way, you can still find the patents online for the Grayscale kit. I'll put a link to these in the text description below so that you can check them out. There's a number of different drawings that might be interesting to have a look through. And if you're wondering what the going rates are, well, here's a price. You can find them on eBay too, but I just didn't find one that's being sold currently. But here's a complete kit with the Grayscale Adapter board and what looks to be either a MacroColor 30 or a MacroColor 30HR, along with all of the required wires and harnesses. If we do a standard 100 yen to the dollar conversion rate, it's not quite that today, but that's usually a nice way to figure out what yen to US dollars is. You basically knock off 2 zeros. So $1,306 basically for these three things, the harness, the card, and the Grayscale card. And down below, it just is saying that it's for the SE30 with 9-inch monochrome display, but it can display 256 grays on that because it includes the Grayscale adapter. However, he didn't put any specs about the card if you connect an external monitor, probably because the seller didn't know. But expect, to me, this is just mind-blowing. $1,300. Maybe you could, I've seen them on eBay, $1,200, but most all of them are more than 1,000 or at least approaching 1,000. Just incredible. Absolutely incredible. For those of you who don't already know, Kai Robinson and Bowl over at the 68K MLA have two spectacular projects going on whereby they recreated the entire Macintosh SE and SE30 motherboards. These are not projects where they just came up with schematics, but they actually have working boards. True, they had to pull some components over from a donor board, but still, the fact that they went from concept to a working board is just mind-blowing. And that really serves as motivation for me to say, well, maybe the cloning of the Micron Xceed PDS video card and Grayscale boards would be yet another reverse engineering project worth doing. Some years back, somebody already cloned the little yoke board that produces Grayscale, but to my knowledge, no one has cloned any of the Micron Xceed PDS video cards, without which that little Grayscale card has no meaning. To my delight, over at the 68K MLA, I found a discussion thread that focuses exclusively on the topic of cloning the Micron Xceed video cards. But unfortunately, that thread seems to have stalled at the end of 2019. Folks, even if you have no intention of connecting an external color display to your SE30 like I did, still, I think that being able to display 256 grays on this little CRT is just awesome. And equally awesome is if you folks could go out and for a very reasonable price be able to purchase the necessary PDS video card and Grayscale board to do the same on your own SE30s. Now, I lack the time and the means to see a project like that through to completion, but I just like to throw the idea out there for those of you who do. Now I'd like to thank a couple very special people who kindly contributed by PayPal to this channel in the month of May 2021. First, I'd like to thank Tom Barber from Connecticut. Tom has played an important role in the Blue SCSI and also in the RASCSI projects over the past year, and links to which I've put in the text description for you below. These are SCSI to SD devices that replace those old spinning SCSI hard drives with a modern solution that uses an SD card for storage. Back in the month of April, I did a very detailed review on a product called Mac SD. So if you haven't seen that, I put a link in the text description below. Be sure to check that out too. Next, I'd like to thank a certain individual who wishes to remain anonymous. Instead of my mentioning his name, he asked that I say a few words about the importance of spaying and neutering your pets, similar to how Bob Barker used to do it at the end of every episode of The Price is Right TV game show in the United States. Folks, spaying and neutering your pets is a simple but important procedure that ensures your pet will not contribute to animal overpopulation. And it also ensures that your pet will not produce one or more of the 1.5 million unwanted offspring that are unfortunately euthanized each and every year in the United States. In addition to sharing your love for your pets, you can share your love for this channel simply by clicking on the thumbs up and subscribe buttons. And if you have any love left over, please note that I have a PayPal link in the text description below. By the way, if you have a video card set up in your Macintosh SE or SE30, I'd love to hear your experiences down in the comments. Thanks for watching this video today, folks, and I wish each and every one of you a great day.
The moment I fell into the fissures that the book would not be destroyed as I had planned. It didn't falling into that starry expanse of which I had only a fleeting glimpse. I've tried to speculate where it might have landed. I must admit, however, such conjecture is futile. Still, questions about whose hands might one day hold my Myst book are unsettling to me. I know my apprehensions might never be allayed. And so I close, realizing that perhaps the ending has not yet been written.